The US dollar is about to get a wake up call, and the latest data coming out of America's own media can't hide the truth anymore. Sanctions have completely failed against Russia. More countries around the world are using dollar alternatives in global trade. And check out this latest report from Business Insider, revealing the biggest threat to dollar dominance is the US economy itself. Inside the article, Stephen Kamen, a former director of the Fed's Division of International Finance, and Mark Sobel, a former US Treasury economist, predicted, given the political polarization of the country, the dysfunction of the US Congress, and the disinterest of politicians of all stripes in curbing the widening US budget deficit, this is hardly unthinkable. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is trying to comfort Americans by stating, inflation is now lower in America than any other major economy in the world. We're seeing real evidence that American consumers are feeling real confidence in their economy again. Let's go ahead and fact check Biden on both of these statements because he's actually totally off. The US official inflation is 3.1%. Meanwhile, other major economies like South Korea come in at 2.8%. Japan, 2.6, Taiwan, 1.8, and how about China, which is actually experiencing deflation at negative 0.8%. But are Americans really feeling confident about the economy? Take a look at what the CEO of Kellogg, America's top breakfast cereal, revealed about the state of the U.S. economy this week.
The cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. So we're advertising about cereal for dinner. If you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable.
You know, this video really sums up America perfectly. While the average American family is struggling with record inflation and resorting to eating breakfast cereal for dinner in order to get by, this wealthy CEO is literally laughing all the way to the bank. But there is a central problem here. America is filled with greed, and it's no longer run by Democrats or Republicans, but instead the military-industrial complex. Our entire financial system has been built on funding wars and conflicts around the world, and we are finally reaching a tipping point that could result in a major shift in global financial markets in the future. This, of course, coincides with the US reputation on the global stage spiraling downward as our foreign policy decisions continue to baffle the world. You can't find a bigger double standard than how the US government is currently funding the wars both in Ukraine and Gaza. On one hand, we are sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight off Russia from an illegal occupation, while simultaneously sending billions of dollars to Israel to enable and support an illegal occupation that has not only lasted for decades, but now has been plausibly ruled by the International Court of Justice to be an active genocide. You simply can't make the argument that what Russia is doing is illegal and then turn around and send 2,000-pound bombs to Israel to destroy innocent civilian lives in Gaza. But of course, supporting two wars isn't enough. Remember, I told you it's the military-industrial complex running the show in Washington. And what I see as one of the largest provocations against China in recent years, the US has decided it will permanently base US Army Special Force, that is Green Berets, on a long-term basis on Kinmen and Matsu Islands, two small islands that are officially part of Taiwan, but located no less than a couple miles from the shores of mainland China. To give you some perspective, here is a picture of one of the smaller islands with the Chinese port city of Xiamen in the background. The US government is literally placing our soldiers directly next to China's borders and then telling the world it's China that is the big aggressor. But once again, can you imagine if it was the other way around? Do you think the US would allow Chinese special forces to be stationed in Cuba? Of course not. And as tensions and chances of an open conflict with China continue to increase, the simple reality is the United States and our dollar can't afford another war, as our government is already in a debt trap. If the dollar collapses, it would send the price of gold skyrocketing and hand economic power both to Russia and China, both of whom have been stockpiling gold in record amounts over the past few years. Just take a look at this article from Nikkei Asia, which reveals China gold purchases soar 30% on economic anxiety. Chinese gold purchases rose 30% in 2023 as the country's central bank bought the commodity to replace its dollar holdings amid tensions with the US. Trust me, the US government is keenly aware of Beijing's strategy to replace US dollar holdings with gold. And it's why earlier this month, top US Treasury officials visited Beijing for economic talks. This visit was kept under radar, but likely sets the stage for Janet Yellen to return to Beijing this summer and continue dialogue with Chinese officials. There is a major reason US Treasury officials are visiting China. They want to make sure that China's government continues to hold on to our Treasury bills. At one time, the Chinese government was one of the largest holders of US debt, holding more than a record $1.3 trillion of long-term treasuries in November 2013. But at the end of 2023, that number has been reduced to under $800 billion, representing a 40% decrease of holdings over the past decade. This is why, despite all the tensions between the US and China, US Treasury officials are still prioritizing a financial relationship with Beijing. But the writing is on the wall for America and the US dollar. The US simply cannot afford to continue funding Ukraine and protect the Israelis in a conflict which will not only increase the already record budget deficit, but by potentially driving oil and gas prices higher, collapse the American economy and the economies of NATO partners. I mean, we've already seen this start to happen. The UK officially entered a recession at the end of 2023. Germany, which is the backbone of the European economy, admitted in a report last week the economy is in troubled waters, with the German finance minister revising its forecast for economic growth for 2024 from 1.3% to a depressing 0.2%. Meanwhile, every week new articles like this one from Foreign Policy titled "The Surprising Resilience of the Russian Economy" tell the reality of the situation. Russia grew faster than all G7 economies last year, and the IMF forecasts it will again in 2024. How about this article from The Economist revealing the truth of the situation? Russia outsmarts Western sanctions and China is paying attention. Meanwhile, Politico released its latest report about Russia and showed how confused the West truly is. The West tried to crush Russia's economy. Why hasn't it worked? The big takeaway from this article is that while the US and its allies have applied no less than 13 rounds of economic sanctions against Russia, there are still legitimate loopholes that exist, the largest being an exemption that allows energy-related transactions. I mean, this is truly remarkable. The US talks a big game in broadcasting to the world on how it's going to imply these sanctions cripple and destroy the Russian economy. But in reality, the US struggles to free itself from Russian-enriched uranium supplies. Last summer, the New York Times broke an incredible report revealing that American companies are paying around $1 billion a year to Russia's state-owned nuclear agency to buy the fuel that generates more than half of the United States' emission-free energy. Even the US can't cut itself off from Russian energy because it's Russia uranium that fuels America's 92 commercial nuclear reactors in the country. 25% of America's population get their energy needs from these nuclear reactors. So quite simply, we cannot cut ourselves off from Russia uranium. Earlier this month, Tucker Carlson traveled to Moscow to personally interview Vladimir Putin in a video that has now been viewed over 200 million times. And during this interview, Putin took a shot at the US and the US dollar. To use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership. It is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. It is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake. If you want to see how crazy the economies and debt of the US government has become, you simply need to look no further than the federal government's interest payments. US government interest payments on our debt have doubled from $515 billion in Q2 of 2020 to now more than $1 trillion in Q4 of 2023. But if America continues to fund Ukraine, aid Israel, and then start a war in China, it's going to absolutely devalue the US dollar and make it harder for the vast majority of Americans and Europeans who are already under a significant amount of economic pressure. But there is something that you can do about this, and it's why for many years I've been an active investor in gold and other precious metals. And no, I'm not talking about buying a gold ETF. I'm actually talking about buying physical gold and silver that you can actually touch in your hands. Now, recently I had the chance to sit down with Lear Capital CEO Kevin DeMeritt and talk about how these major shifts in geopolitics are affecting the future of the US dollar and the precious metals market. Trust me, if you're an active investor and concerned about the devaluing of the US dollar and rising inflation, you're going to want to hear this interview. Let's jump in. Well, everybody, I'm really happy to welcome into the studio. This is Kevin DeMeritt. He's the CEO of Lear Capital. Kevin, thank you for joining our program and helping our listeners learn a lot more about investing in gold.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here, Cyrus. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with a really important question. Why should investors be looking at gold and precious metals in 2024?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's, 32 trillion reasons. at this particular, well, 34 trillion reasons now,
Right.
with the debt being at $34 trillion. There is a 92% correlation with the amount of debt and the price of gold. So if you look at that correlation, since you were legally able to own gold back in 1974, that correlation has stood up through the test of time. And when we see the gold price below where that correlation should be, which is $3,200 per ounce at this particular point, then you want to purchase the gold and let it go up to the $3,200 an ounce. If you see it over, obviously you want to sell. So in
Right.
2013, the price of gold ran up to 2,000. The price should have been right around 1,600. It did come back down to around 1,400, 1,350, and now it's moved its way back up to 2,000. Again, should be 3,200. So
Right.
with the government just spending so much money, Cyrus, you have $1 trillion of just interest payments that they have to print up every year, plus the $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion worth of spending. You're going to have somewhere between $2.5 to $3 trillion worth of spending. Every time they print one of those dollars, our dollars become worth less. The price of gold goes the other way. So
Right.
to me, that's the number one reason that you should own gold today.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And we know that as the United States, our government continues to get more and more in debt. I mean, it's almost seems like it's impossible for us to get out of that cycle. We're involved in all these wars across the world. So I think it's a great thing, as inflation is, just a huge problem right now in the United States and around the world. So I think that precious metals make a really great investment, of course. But what about for the first time buyer? What is the most important thing? I might have viewers on here that have never actually owned physical gold, because we're not talking about like buying an ETF, right? We're talking actually like physical gold that you can hold in your hands and precious metals. What is something a first-time buyer needs to know?
Well, the first thing they know is they should get educated about the market. Why do you want to own gold? One of the great reasons that people, we talk about it a lot and people are shocked to hear is the gold price has outperformed the stock market since the year 2000. Now, I know that the year 2000 is a long way back, but we did it on purpose. The stock market was fairly low in 2000. The gold market was fairly low in 2000. And which ones performed over long periods of time? Gold has outperformed the stock market. So it's a diversification tool for people to get educated on. How do I diversify? How do I protect against record high stock market today, the commercial market, the geopolitical things that are going on out there? You just need to get educated, because gold is easy to buy, easy to sell. It's never been worth zero.
Right.
So if you've got this great diversification strategy, but you don't know how to use it, the first thing to do is learn how it works in your own portfolio. And that's what we provide, just a lot of educational material up front so people can get educated about it and really realize how much of the precious metal should I have in the portfolio and why should it be in the portfolio.
Yeah, fantastic. I totally agree. And I think that's something I preach on this channel as we talk about investing and, certainly stocks and real estate, all these kind of different assets, but precious metals should be part of that diversified portfolio. Last question for you, Kevin. What makes Lear Capital? Why is it the best place to buy precious metals? And, why should our viewers here, if they're considering this investment, why should they consider Lear Capital?
Well, we're one of the longest standing physical precious metals companies in the country. We've done over $3 billion worth of business for our happy customers. And we have one thing that we've implemented last year that I think just sets us apart, which is a 24-hour purchase guarantee. So when you purchase from us, you're going to get an invoice either through email or Federal Express. It's going to show you exactly what you're purchasing. It's going to show your fees. It's going to show everything on that invoice. And you have 24 hours to decide if that's for you,
Right.
or you can cancel that transaction for any reason whatsoever. So we understand that first-time buyers are really, the people coming into the market at this particular time. I mean, if you've already done business with us, we've done well, and so it's great. But that first-time investor, they want to feel comfortable.
Right.
It's a little alternative investment that's a little bit different than stocks and other types of things. So we wanted to have something where people felt comfortable doing business with us and felt comfortable with what they are getting. They can go around, check on it, and things like that. So you got 24 hours, purchase it. We lock in the price. You can call us back if you have some concerns or questions, and cancel at any time. So I think that's a big difference between us and everybody else, plus fees and all that other kind of stuff. But that's a big one.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, everybody, I really enjoyed welcoming Kevin into the show today and just really, again, providing that value. And that's really what Lear Capital really does. Now, if you are interested in getting involved and learning more about this, again, this is about education. If you want to learn more, you're going to go to learcyrus.com. learcyrus.com. Again, it's learcyrus.com, or you can call this 1-800 number, which is 1-800-489-6450, 1-800-489-6450, or go to learcyrus.com. Kevin, I'm going to give you the final word. Do you have anything else for our special, anything you can do for our special viewers here? Considering that, this is a new partnership for us, and, we wanted to do something special for our loyal followers.
Yeah, we always like to do something special. We really appreciate, having me on, and the show is fantastic. So what we're going to do is anyone who goes to the website or calls that number, we're going to credit their account $250 automatically. You don't have to purchase, you don't have to do a thing. We're just going to credit the account $250. When you purchase, you can use that against shipping. You can use that against IRA, so you can place physical gold into IRAs. There's some fees to set that up. That $250 will cover all of that and shipping to get the metals out to you if you decide to do business with us. So just make sure that if you call or Google us and then come in from a different way, that you mention the program and just Cyrus, something to give us a hint to put the 250 in there. But
okay,
yeah, we'll get that in everybody's account.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great bonus. And Kevin, again, thank you for your time. And everybody, thank you for making it to this point in the video. Can't wait to hear your comments, and we'll see everybody in our next video very soon. Everyone, as always, I want to thank you for your incredible time and support. You could be anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with me here on YouTube. I also want to thank Lear Capital for sponsoring today's video, and make sure that you go to learcyrus.com to learn more about how you can buy the world's most precious metal and add that to your portfolio to have some exposure to the most valuable thing that's really going to help stop inflation and make sure that you have that balance in your investment portfolio. As always, I want to thank you all for your incredible support. Thank you for being here, and I can't wait to see you all in our next video soon.